A woman kneels beside a scattered body on the banks of a river. The body doesn't belong to a stranger, it belongs to her husband. Cut into pieces and thrown across the land by his own brother. She has already searched for weeks, walking marsh after marsh, asking every stranger she meets if they've seen a fragment of him. She's not a mortal woman. She is Aset, the goddess the Greeks would later call Isis. And this moment on the riverbank is not the end of her story. It's closer to the beginning. Egyptian mythology rarely slows down to explain why a goddess would spend years piecing together her murdered husband's body with nothing but grief and persistence. It just simply shows her doing it. To understand why, it helps to go back further, to a family already unraveling before Aset was born into it. According to Egyptian tradition, the sky goddess Nut and the earth god Geb produced 5 children. Osiris came first, then Aset, then Set, Nephthys, and in some versions a 5th sibling who was absorbed into later retellings. The details shift depending on the era and the temple recording them, but one detail stays remarkably consistent across nearly 3,000 years of Egyptian religion. Osiris and Aset loved each other before they were even born. Ancient sources describe the two embracing inside of their mother's womb, already devoted to one another before either had taken a single breath. It is an unusual detail for a mythology to preserve, and it tells us something about how the Egyptians understood this particular marriage. It wasn't arranged nor a political convenience. It began before the two of them even existed as separate people. That closeness would carry Osiris and Aset through a great deal. It would also make what happened next considerably harder. Osiris became king. Ancient Egyptian tradition credits him with an achievement that mattered more than any military conquest. He taught the people how to farm, how to make bread, how to press grapes into wine, and how to live according to law rather than force. Egypt under Osiris was remembered as something close to a golden age. Aset ruled beside him, and she was no passive queen. Egyptian texts describe her as clever, resourceful, and fiercely protective of the order Osiris had built. She was associated with magic even then, with power she would later use in ways no myth had ever anticipated. But not everyone in the family was content with how things had turned out. Set, Osiris's brother, wanted his throne. So Set began planning in secret. He had a magnificent chest built, precisely measured to fit Osiris and no one else. At a banquet, Set presented it as a gift, announcing that whoever fit inside perfectly could keep it. One guest after another climbed in, but none of them fit. Then Osiris tried. The moment he laid down inside of the chest, Set's men slammed the lid shut and sealed it. They threw it into the Nile, and the river carried Osiris away while his brother watched. Aset learned what had happened, and she didn't wait for anyone's permission. She began looking immediately. The chest eventually washed ashore near Byblos on the coast of what is now Lebanon, where a tree grew around it, encasing the entire coffin and side of its trunk. That tree grew remarkably fast and strong until the king of the region had it cut down and used as a pillar in his palace, completely unaware of what was hidden inside. Aset was able to trace the story that far, then disguise herself and take a position in the royal household to get close to the pillar. Some versions of the myth describe her nursing the queen's infant son, offering him her finger instead of a normal feeding, and attempting to make the child immortal by holding him over sacred fire each night. The queen walked in during one of these rituals and screamed. So Aset was forced to reveal herself. She explained what she had been trying to do, and then she requested the pillar. Her request was granted. She freed Osiris's body from the wood, and for a moment it must have felt as though the worst of it was over, but it wasn't. Set discovered that Aset had recovered the body, and he wasn't finished with his brother. Set cut Osiris into pieces, as many as 14 in most versions of the story, and scattered them across Egypt, confident that no one, not even Aset, could ever put him back together. He had underestimated her. Aset began the search again, this time walking through marshes and along riverbanks with her sister Nephthys beside her, gathering each fragment of Osiris one at a time. According to the myth, she found all of them but one. A fish had swallowed the final piece. She reassembled what remained anyway, wrapping the body in linen, and used magic that Egyptian priests would later associate with the very first act of mummification in their tradition. But Osiris didn't return to his former life. He rose instead as something new. Not a living king, but a permanent ruler of the underworld, judge of the dead, a role that would define Egyptian religious life for millennia. But before Osiris departed into that new existence, something else happened. Aset transformed herself into a kite, which is a falcon-like bird, and hovered over her husband's restored body long enough to conceive a child. She gave birth to a son named Horus, and she raised him in secret, hidden in the marshes of the Nile Delta away from Set's reach. This was not an easy motherhood. Set knew the child existed and knew exactly what he represented. A living heir to the throne Set had stolen. Egyptian myth describes repeated attempts on Horus's life, scorpion stings, poison, and other dangers that Aset had to counter using magic she had spent a lifetime mastering. In one well-known episode, Horus is stung and appears close to death. Aset's cries are so desperate that the sun god Ra sends Thoth down to teach her the words needed to heal him. She learns them and she saves her son. This becomes a pattern across her mythology. Aset is rarely shown receiving power freely. She acquires it often through persistence, occasionally through trickery, and always because the circumstances demand it.